Hello and welcome to the Wealthy Wellbeing podcast, where we talk about all things health, fitness, real estate, and entrepreneurship. I'm your host, Zach Bush, and today I have a very special guest, friend of mine, Rex Shippey. He is out of Idaho, and he is a real estate investor. So Rex, thanks for coming on.
Hey, thank you so much for having me, Zach. I appreciate it. It's been
Why don't you give everybody a little bit background on your journey through real estate and whatever else you think might be good for them to know about you, and then we'll see where we go.
Yeah, so my journey in real estate really started year and a half ago is when the real estate journey actually started. I didn't know anything about real estate. Nothing about real estate. My family didn't do real estate. My parents, grandparents, nothing. No one did real estate. So for me, and we can actually go back a little bit farther than that too, because I've been self-employed since I was 18. So I had my own businesses, bought and sold small businesses. And some friends of mine convinced me to read the book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And prior to that, to me, what I thought investing was to buy a new piece of equipment so I could go out and run a new piece of equipment to make more money, and not realizing that I could actually invest my money somewhere and I could keep doing what I was doing over here and my money would be bringing money in. So that was my idea of investing. But I was trimming a tree because I had a tree service business, and I'm like, you know what? They've been really trying to get me to read this book. I'm going to see if I can find it on YouTube, because I'm not going to buy it. Like, come on, I'm not going to buy a book. So I went on YouTube and I found a version of it on YouTube. So it's free. So I listened to it while I'm trimming this tree. And when I got done, I'm like, wow, I've been doing a lot of stuff wrong. I've thought about money all wrong up to this point. Like, this book just makes sense. And because I grew up without no debt. I didn't have any credit at that time. I didn't have nothing. I bought stuff creatively, not knowing it really, but just did. But then when I read that book, I went home and told my wife, I'm like, okay, I read this super cool book today. Like, it totally changed my thinking about money. So I started explaining some of it to her, and she's like, oh yeah, she's interested, but it was something totally different. She didn't actually read it, so therefore it didn't have the same effect on her, because she came from a background like me, no debt, just pay stuff off, live below your means, which is always a good thing, but just, you didn't need to make much money, didn't need to invest your money. So I once I read that book, it was a process, because it's like when you flip a switch, it takes a bit for it to actually, it's like the seed was planted and then the roots started to grow and grow and grow, So I started looking at stock market. I'm like, I'm going to invest in the stock market, and that's where I will start getting a return. Maybe I'll buy some gold, some silver, maybe some of that stuff, but I'm going to do stock market. And then I started looking into day trading a little bit. I'm like, I'm going to do day trading. I'm going to get rich super quick. I'm going to be one of those people that just can set up my phone and make $1,000 in a few minutes, like, this is going to be pretty cool. And as I looked into that, I realized, okay, that's really not me. That's probably not a reality. I don't know anything about the stock market. I don't care to invest in the stock market. I want something I can see, and at the same time, I'm sitting there, as I'm still running my business, I see these people around town that are fixing up houses and selling houses. And I seen some that needed to be fixed up. And I'm like, what would be really cool is if I could buy one of those houses, fix it up, and then turn around and resell it. Like, that's what would be really cool. So I started pursuing that a little bit. There was a house that had burnt down, and it was burnt. And I did some research. I tried to find the owners. I looked here and looked there, and I talked to the neighbors and got in contact with a family member who could, and never was able to actually get in contact with the owner themselves. But it took me quite a while. I'm like, I love this. Like, I started getting addicted to the process of, reaching out to this person to then find this person's contact information, talk to this person. And I could see the property. I'm like, I can fix the house up. I helped my grandpa remodel burnt mobile homes. So I'm like, I can remodel a burnt house. Like, that's not going to be a problem. But I started getting addicted to that, and this was a year and a half ago or so, well, probably about nearly 2 years ago now at this time. But this is when I would just didn't know anything, and I'm literally just barely starting. So I finally came to the realization, I want to invest in real estate. I want to buy properties. I want to actually hold properties. And I just remember thinking, like, wouldn't it be so cool if I could drive around town and be like, I own that house right over there. Oh yeah, we bought that house down the road. I fixed up that house right over there. I'm like, would start feeling like, and since I'm leaving my stamp on the community, I'm leaving a legacy behind me. Rex owns that house. He owns that house. He bought that house. So just super cool. I'm like, that would just be amazing. So, and then I got hooked onto, someone told me about Bigger Pockets podcast. So I started listening to a lot of Bigger Pockets podcasts. And as I would be out working, I would turn it on and listen to it and listen to it and listen to it. A lot of amazing stuff. But the struggle I was running into is, they said, go get a bank loan, go buy a house, live in it for a year or something, refinance, buy another house, just that process. And I'm like, that's the only way that seemed sort of hopeful. Because I would also listen to Grant Cardone stuff, and he said, go buy 100 units, start with 100 units. And I'm like, that's impossible. I can't do that. Like, who out there can just go start with 100 units? Mm-hmm. And then here's someone on Bigger Pockets that says they bought a small multifamily and they used owner finance with it. And I'm like, that's really cool. Like, they didn't have to get a bank loan. But I'm like, that's just once in a lifetime thing. That doesn't actually happen. It's like, that just doesn't really happen. That's not reality. So I just kept listening. And I'm like, well, I guess my way to do it is I got to start building up my credit. I got to go see if I can get a credit card and start building credit, because I got to buy a house. And so I sat down and talked with my wife about it. And we're like, I would love to get 10 houses over the next 10 years. If in 10 years I could end up with 10 houses, like, that would be amazing. And then maybe by that, in 10 years, I can quit my job, or, get out of the tree service and go do something else, but have the 10 houses. And even as hopeless as it seemed, that was the only way I knew that I could do it. So I just kept pushing there, kept pushing. Because I'm like, I'm going to have to save up at least 25% for every property that I buy. So all that just seemed so hopeless. But I just kept pushing. Because I'm like, this is the only way to actually do it, I think. So in November of 2022, one of my brothers says, hey, Rex, I just heard this video of this guy on YouTube. Like, he's doing like some really cool stuff. Like, I think it would really help you out in what you're wanting to do. And then finally he ended up sending the video over. And I sat down and listened to it. It was a video of Pace Morby on one of his 16-hour lives. And I sat down and I listened to it, and I listened. And I got all the way through that video and I looked over at my wife and I said, this is the way we're going to make it happen. Like, I don't have to go to the bank. I don't have to wait till I build my credit up. I can literally go start buying stuff now. That was the biggest, just eye-opening realization that I myself was holding myself down here because this is what most people said I needed to do. I wasn't looking out to find all these different ways. I was just listening to what they said I needed to do, and I was holding myself there, even though I bought vehicles and I bought equipment and I bought 100 head of sheep and a property all on owner finance. I bought all this different stuff on owner finance, but I never took it into the investing side of things. Who's going to ever sell their property on owner finance? Like, come on, that's an investment property. That's a bad deal for them to sell it on owner finance. That was my thought. So once I listened to that was in December. And so me and one of my brothers were talking and I'm like, I don't know anything about real estate. He didn't know anything about real estate. So I'm like, he's like, we should put together like this mastermind accountability group thing. I'm like, I'm game. So we talked to a few people and we got one put together because none of us knew anything about real estate. We're like, this is where we'll push each other. What did you learn last week? What are you working on this week? So every Saturday morning, 4:30, I'd wake up, drive an hour, meet at a little cafe at 6 o'clock in the morning, sit there for 2 hours, discuss what we learned, what we were working on the following week, go home. Next Saturday, get up, drive an hour, sit down, and just over and over and over and over and over. And then come 1st of January, I told my wife, I said, you know what? I have to be in a community of people that are doing what I want to be doing. This group here is amazing, but I have to be over here too. And I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to do that because it's wintertime. My work's slow. I don't have just an extra $10,000 set aside to go join a mentorship program. So I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I need that. And Katrina, she's like, I'll sell my horse if you want me to. And I'll take that money and get you into the mentorship. And I'm like, no, you can't do that. It's your horse. You can't do that. I will find a way. So after talking to the enrollment guys, finally, I'm like, hey, will you sell or finance me into it? Of course, I had no idea. I'm like, well, I'll just ask. And he's like, we might can make that happen. So we made that happen. I sell or finance my way into it. But when we'll backtrack just a little bit. When I heard Pace's first YouTube video, I just started making phone calls, calling. I didn't know what I was doing, but I was doing something. You hear the term, take action. And sometimes that's great. It's a great thing to do because I started learning like, okay, I don't want to do this and I don't want to do this. Got into probably about a month into sub 2, and February, March time, my work started picking up, and I wasn't buying anything at that time. I was still just learning and grinding and making calls, and so I took a step back from everything. Anything real estate related, I just took a step back, put it on the back burner. My business started. I was cutting trees. But I started listening to mindset stuff and just worked on my mindset. And for about 3 to 4 months, I just listened to mindset stuff. But because of what I did earlier on, when I didn't know what I was doing, I was just doing things. I built relationships and I made connections that ended up bringing me my first deal that I closed May 6th of last year. first investment property. Another guy that I knew and had been talking to, he was going to buy the deal. He decided not to last minute. It was from a wholesaler. He called me and said, hey, do you want the deal? I'm like, yeah. So that's how I got my first deal, just by doing things that I didn't know what I was doing, but I was building connections. But even when I bought that deal, I was still just kind of had real estate on the back burner. I'm like, this is so cool. I actually got my first deal now. And it was a property that we were going to rehab. So we started rehabbing it. I lived 2 hours away from the property. So I'd work all week, and then I would drive 2 hours on a Saturday morning, work on the property along with my brother, because we bought it together, work on the property, and then drive 2 hours back home. And that's a long week. When you work hard all week and then you drive, and then you work hard all day Saturday, and then you drive 2 hours back home late Saturday night. Mm-hmm. But we just kept doing that for quite a while, and just slowly working on the property. And we ended up putting a lot more work into it than what we were planning to. But around the 1st of June of last year, I was running my tree service business. We also raised and trained border collies that we would travel around the United States and compete with. So my wife, Katrina, was kind of taking care of those. I would go work all day, come home. And that's when I started to get back in doing the real estate stuff. It was around end of May, 1st of June. So I would then in the evenings be working on the real estate. And we like doing things together. We love doing things together. But I was working here. She was working here. I would get home and be working over here, and just wasn't doing anything together. So we finally just had to sit down and have a conversation of, we have to change something. We love what we do, but we hate doing it apart from each other. Mm. So what needs to change? And so it took some time of kind of thinking through it. Like, where do we want to go? Why are we focused on things that aren't going to get us where we want to go? I want to be the best dog trialer there is. I don't want to run a tree service business. I want to own a ranch. Like, we already had a beautiful place. We had the dogs, we had the beautiful place, but I'm like, I need to focus on the real estate. I need to build this out and then move it up and buy a ranch with it. So I'm like, what do we need to cut out of our lives here? That way we can work together and we can build an empire that will then build our dreams from there. So we decided to sell everything we had. We had 45 acres of land. We had 100 head of sheep that we raised non-GMO lamb. We had dogs that we imported from Ireland and trained, and my wife had just bought a reining horse. Just so we was living, in a sense, living our dream to a point, but we wasn't. So we sat down and decided just to sell everything we had. Sell the tree service business, sell the equipment, sell the property, sell everything. It wasn't an easy decision, but it was one of those decisions that was, I guess you would say, freeing in a sense, because we was doing so many things. It was like peanut butter spread everywhere. And it was just, we was able to free up so much stuff. I sent one of my brothers a text message and said, hey, we're going to sell everything and move to town. And he called me like immediately. He's like, are you serious? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, you're crazy. But that was all I ever known, was the country, was landscaping, tree service, that type of work. That was all I ever known. So we said, okay, but we have to have a timeline on it. So he said, by the end of August, we're going to be moved to town. We'll have everything sold off, or most everything. What hasn't sold won't be sold yet, but we'll have everything sold off. We will either rent a place in town, or hopefully buy it subject to house in town, but we're going to be moved to town. I don't know how it's going to happen, but that's what we're going to do. So we had a time set. So we just started working towards that. I started doing a lot more calling in the real estate, trying to buy more properties. As I was slowly fading out of the tree service, I was just doing a lot more calling. And we're getting into July, and I'm looking at some little places I seen in town, looking at some apartments, looking at renting some apartments, and like, what is there out there? I'm like, I just want to conserve as much as I can, and maybe get $1,000 apartment, $1,500 at the most, and we'll just sell everything. We'll take that money, live off that money for a period of time until our business starts going. It sounded amazing. It sounded really, really good. But it isn't quite that easy. But I found a beautiful house, like amazing house. I called the agent, and the agent says, yeah, we'll do subject to on it. The owner's got a 3.7% VA loan. It's built in 22. It's got a pool in the neighborhood and all this stuff. And I looked at it and I'm like, that's an awesome house. We could get into it for fairly low, but I'm like, it won't cash flow as a long-term rental. So I'm like, you know what? Let me think about it a bit. So we thought about it for a couple of days and we talked it over. And finally I called him back and said, you know what? It's just too nice for us. We just don't need something that nice right now. He's like, you will never get a house in this kind of a neighborhood for this kind of terms. Like, what are you doing? I'm like, I know, and I probably won't, but it's just too nice. I don't need something that nice. I wanted to keep my payment at $1,500 a month, and this payment is $3,600 a month. And I'm like, that's just kind of where we're at. So Pace is doing a meetup on the eastern side of the state, and I decided to drive over there. So I text a few people in the local area and said, hey, we're going over here to this meetup. And one of the people texted back and said, maybe think about what you're going to get out of it besides just seeing Pace. And I'm like, if that's all I get out of it, that's fine. But I'm going to go over there. It's 6-hour drive one way just to get over there. So I'm like, all right. So we drove over there. Got to this little diner, and there's like 8 people, 10, maybe 10 of us all together in there. So just a little tiny group. And we're just talking, and Pace starts going around the room. Hey, what's the opportunities here? What do you have? What are you looking for? He's kind of asking kind of what we're seeing for opportunities. And I'm like, you know what? I did talk to this one agent about this house, but I'm not going to buy it. It's just way nicer than I need. He's like, what's the address? So he pulls it up right there, and he's looking at it. He's like, you're not going to buy this house? And I'm like, no. He's like, what's the terms? So I told him the terms. He's like, you're seriously not going to go buy this house? He's like, why? You're living in a fifth wheel RV right now. Your family needs a house. You're moving to town. You got a beautiful neighborhood, safe neighborhood, nice house. He's like, just go buy the house. And I'm like, but I don't need it. You know, I was wanting to keep my payment lower. He's like, Rex, you're spending $2 to try to save $1. Your mindset is here. You don't feel like you deserve the house. You don't feel like you can even manage the house. He said, is $2,000 a month going to break you? $24,000 in a year. He's like, do you not think you can do 2 extra wholesale deals this year? Do you not think that house will give you the confidence and the drive and the push to do an extra 1 to 2 wholesale deals in the entire year? That's what you're looking. And he's like, that's why you're not going to buy it. And I would say something, and he just kind of like slap me, slap me. Not literally, but he was just showing me my broken mindset. So I said, okay, I'll go buy it. I said, I'll go buy it right now. He's like, here's my phone number. Text me when you get a bot. He said, I'll even be a lender on it for you if you want me to. I'm like, what am I waiting for? So we left there and I'm like, well, I'm going to go buy the house. Called the agent up and said, hey, we'll buy the house. You know, it was one of those deals I didn't have to fight for. The hardest part of doing that deal was fighting my mindset and overcoming the brokenness in my mindset. The agent said yes right when I first called him. Mm-hmm. Like I didn't have to sell him on anything. So it was just, the hardest part was literally my own self. But I told Katrina, I said, if I buy this house, because of buying this house, it will make me hundreds of thousands of dollars. Mm-hmm. I don't know how, but it will. We'll build a relationship with the agent. Somewhere I'm going to have a lender on this deal. Pace said he'd be a lender for it if he wanted me to. So I said, somewhere, I don't know where, but this house will make us a bunch of money. So we bought the house, but I was looking for a lender. And I'm on a Zoom, a family night Zoom. And this is a little, there's a lot of people have a lot of trouble raising money. And I get it. Raising private money can be hard, especially if you're trying to raise it for a personal residence. That's kind of a no-no. I'm on a Zoom and a few weeks before we're supposed to close on a Zoom, and about a minute from the end of the Zoom, Pace is like, hey, I'll get to you and you and you and you and you. He's like, Rex, I want to pull you up here for a little bit. Because I had my hand raised. He told a little bit of my story. And he said, he's looking for a lender to fund the entry fee on this deal. Someone go make that happen. So right there, he told 400 people to go lend me money. And I had 6 people reach out to me that same day that all was interested in being a lender on the deal. Some of them didn't even want to be lenders. Some of them's just like, hey, I just want to lend on it because he said he's going to do a story later on, and I want to be in that story that he does. Mm-hmm. So it was, in a sense, you could say I was born on third base when it says in a sense coming into real estate, but I wasn't, but I had to work to get there. That was the easiest, in a sense, private money I ever raised. The guy that was the private money lender there. We own a property together now, but that was the start of my private money lending sub 2 deal. That house is really what gave me the biggest jump start into it. And one of the big things I took away from it was when someone is farther ahead than me and they say, Rex, go do this, just go do that. Mm-hmm. I wanted a house in town. I wanted to be in a nice neighborhood, but I wasn't going to buy it because I thought it was too expensive. He said, go buy the house. And I just went and bought it. And that literally is what totally jump-started our whole entire business, was because of that. And because of buying that house, we bought multiple other properties. A lender that was here is now a private money partner here. And then because of that, I got a lender here and another lender and another lender. All these different things all came from that. Your first deal is always your hardest one. Mm-hmm. As far as to get a lender on and all that stuff, especially a primary residence. But it's like when someone ahead of you tells you what you need to do, just go do that. And so that's really what got me into it. And then since then, we've been able to buy, I want to say 7 more properties, I think, actually, and one of the lenders that lent me the most money, had someone here a few months ago lend me $460,000 for a house at like a 10% rate, and it's all because I started back here and just sat there and built. And I built those relationships, but we've been able to sit there and acquire properties and get lenders for our properties. And then we started a whole corporate housing company because we bought this house. We then bought another house. We found another house that was for sale, buy it, and ended up turning it into a corporate rental. And then because of that, we built our whole corporate rental company from that. So it's just so cool being able to. A year ago, I dreamed of doing what I'm doing today. That was my dream. I didn't have income coming in for months. We was spending money and we was spending money and we was spending money with no income coming in. And is what really helped me to make that happen in a year. For us to make that happen in a year is surrounding ourselves with people farther ahead of us and pushing us to that. Because a year and a half ago, I was still cutting trees, climbing trees, cutting trees. And I thought that would be a dream come true if I could literally be doing real estate full time. Like that would be the dream. And 12 months later, it happened. And not just doing real estate full time, but doing real estate full time and actually making money from it. Because I was doing real estate full time for the last year, but I wasn't necessarily making much money from it.
Yeah, I love that. The whole journey, especially the mindset piece that you talked about, lots of different components to get you to where you are. And I think, you mentioned that it seems like, hey, I was born on third base. Like from an outside perspective, somebody who's jumping into where you were even 6 months ago, they could say like, oh, look at how lucky Rex is for getting X, Y, and Z thing. He built a relationship with Pace, and that's, been a huge help for him. But I think what sometimes gets lost, even internally, is all of the work that you put in before that. That's what made you quote unquote lucky, right? It's not that you weren't doing anything. You were making the calls, you were putting the work in, you were working through the mindset issues that everybody goes through as part of starting a new venture that they're not familiar with. And I think it's really important to harp on that it seems like, hey, I got a little bit of a head start, but you didn't. You put in that work, and it's really easy to forget that you put in the work, and for other people to see that, hey, that's not just happening all of a sudden. Like there was a foundation that was built that you can now build the rest of your business on. So I think that's really important to point out as part of your journey. And so you mentioned the corporate housing. What does that look like? What does that entail for people who may not be super familiar with it?
So the common term is people can say midterm rentals, MTRs, midterm rentals. We have a company where our company places corporate clients, displaced families, anybody that needs a furnished house for 30 days or more. So we'll rent a house out for 30 days, maybe it's 60 days, 90 days, 6 months, whatever that needs to look like, whatever their situation is, we adapt to fit them and get them a place to live.
Okay. And do you rent all of your current properties? Is that how you house most of them, or is it a mix of like long-term rentals as well?
So we had a mix. We do have one property that is sort of a long-term-ish rental. It's actually the first property we ever bought. It took us a year. We held that property for a year before we ever put a tenant in there. We did repairs, ran into contractor trouble, all of the things. That's the stuff that nobody sees and the hard things that nobody sees. Contractors walk off with a bunch of money, and it was great learning for us. But that one is more of like a long-term rental, but it's managed by a different company. I just had hired another property manager to manage that. Everything we have currently is midterm rentals in everything that we have. We did have co-living for a little bit. We did try that out for a few months. It's just not a fit for me in certain situations, but I think you need a minimum of 7 bedrooms to really make that one work well. And I had 5 bedrooms. So the 1st of August was when I converted it back to corporate rental, and I have clients in there loving the place.
And where do you source those clients to? Like you house them for yourself, and then for even people who have their own rentals as well, right?
Yeah, I do. Yep. It's just building. Most of our stuff is relationship based. And we have spent the thousands of hours to build a company that specializes in one thing, and now the relationships that we have been able to build over the last 8 months, they all know us as this one thing. This is what they do. And so anytime they need that one thing, they call us. They could try to call and find someone else. But who are you going to go to? If you see someone that does 3 different things over here and you only need one of those things, and you see someone over here that only does one thing and they do the thing you're needing, you're probably going to go to them first. Mm-hmm. So it's really been a lot of relationships that we've built, and it's not been easy. It's another one of those things that it's been really, really hard, but it's the work that nobody else will do. And getting in there and getting it started, and the uncertainty. What if this doesn't work out? What if my house gets rented for 3 months and then it's vacant for the next 6 months and I can't get someone in there? Mm-hmm. I just bought the house, and then I just put $20,000 in furnishings in the house. And then now it's vacant for the next 6 months and I got to make that mortgage payment. So that uncertainty, but being able to push through that and say, this is what I have. This is where it's rented. I can't have 6 months of vacancy there on a half a dozen properties. I have to build something so powerful and so strong that we don't have those vacancies. Mm-hmm. And it's not that I don't plan for vacancies, because I do, but most people, the first thing is what cripples them. But what if? And it just stops everything they do. Mm-hmm. That's one of the most damaging.
Yeah.
That's one of the most damaging things a person can say that keeps them from doing anything. But what if?
Right. So how did you, I know it's just all right, just push through it. What is it, just sheer willpower that got you through that hurdle? Or is there anything specific that you can help somebody who's maybe going through those same things?
So we paid a lot of money for different, not coaching in a sense, coaching calls in a sense. What's the other word for it? I'm losing it, but in a sense, pay money, consultations. Okay. A lot of money in consultation stuff, but there's been a lot of it that's just been trial and error, learning things, pivoting, learning, pivoting. Over the last year, we have probably spent over $100,000 in learning and mistakes. So between the mistakes that we made and the learning stuff that the money that we've invested into learning, and that's a lot. But me as a person, that's why I've been able to build what I built, is because I jump in the water and see if it's cold. And if it is, then I'll swim out versus I'm too lazy to reach down and just fill the water to see if it's cold. I'll just jump right in there. And then I'll be like, oh, this is too cold. I'm going to swim out of here. So it's just that it's been a lot of trial and error, trying things. It didn't work. We pivot, try, pivot.
Yeah, it's funny that you say it, because at the beginning I wrote a note down that when somebody recommended, I forget who it was, your brother, the Rich Dad Poor Dad book, you specifically went out and was like, I'm going to find a free version of this on YouTube or online somewhere. It's like, I don't want to pay for that. And now, 2.5 years later, you're spending directly or indirectly, hundreds of thousands of dollars on education and learning, right? And so it's just funny how that transformation happens. And I mean, obviously it seems like it's working, but what would you say to somebody who's like considering investing in themselves?
I would say, what are your goals? Find out what your goals are and what you want to go do. If you want to go buy real estate, you probably shouldn't necessarily go invest in an Amway coaching program or, drop shipping coaching program, but if you want to invest in real estate, you want to learn to invest, spend the money, invest in yourself. That, even if you don't have the money, find a way to make payments on it, something, and invest in yourself. Whether that's just one book, podcast, YouTube videos, like even just that stuff. The easiest and cheapest way to change our lives is literally just by changing our thoughts. And the cheapest way by doing that is by filling our mind with stuff that's pointing us in the direction that we want to go. It's free. You don't have to spend money on it, but it's well worth it to spend money on it. But you don't have to.
Yeah, I think the free stuff gets you enough information that if you can push through that initial fear, hesitation, struggle, and take the action and learn a bunch, that will get you the proof of concept, get you the money coming in, and then you can spend that money to accelerate it. All spending money does, whether it's a coaching program, mentorship, even a book, it accelerates that learning, it accelerates that experience, and eventually accelerates the wealth. So it's directly investing in that eventually will get you there. But the free versions, like you said, are good. It just might take a little bit longer. But the most important part is, and that part that you've mastered is, I'm going to start and then we'll figure it out along the way. And that I'll stumble and I'll fall, but I'll get back up and we'll figure it out.
Yeah. And from when I paid money in my first coaching program, our first mentorship program, or whatever you want to call it, when I joined Sub 2. I joined Sub 2 January of 2023, the 1st of January 2023. I didn't make a single penny off of that until the 1st of November 2023. It was 10 months before I seen a single dime come in from that. All it was is spending, and spending, but learning. I think by the time November hit, I had bought 4 properties by the time November hit. And I wasn't making money off of those. The one was still under construction. The one house I lived in. The next one, I was going to wrap it, buy it, and it was going to be a wrap, and it wasn't wrapping, wasn't selling. And the 4th property, I bought it. It was there a month. We had it for a month. The tenant that was previously in there moved out. I put a tenant in there the 1st of November. And that's when that's the first time that I actually started making money, because I never wholesaled anything. I just bought and bought. But then I put a tenant in there the 1st of November, and about a week later, guess what I find out? I bought this property subject to, but there was $20,000 in arrears on the property that I didn't realize. That was a month after I closed on the property. The property went clear into foreclosure. I had a tenant in the property. Talk about a predicament. I had a tenant in the property. The property's in foreclosure. I simply can't even make a mortgage payment. And there's $20,000 in arrears I got to catch up and reinstate the whole loan.
Wow.
That's what you call a sickening feeling and a learning experience. But, you know, I got through it. We still own the property, one of our greatest properties we ever bought. But just because you invest in it, I invested in this program thinking, oh, I'm going to get something in a little bit. But I didn't. It was 10 months before I made a single dime from it. So it's just have that mindset too. And it's hard for people starting out to, you know, even though I put a ton of work into it for 10 months before I started seeing returns, but that work that I put into it was building the foundation, digging the hole, building the foundation before I actually started to build from there. But then that's when I really started to build. It was from there.
Yeah, and so you've come from all of that. The foundation is built. What is you obviously have things up and running. What does the company look like right now? Is it you and your wife, and do you have anybody else? Like, how are you guys kind of operating things at the moment?
Yeah, so it's me and my wife. Right now we hired some operations managers on a contract base for like 3 months to go in and really build out all of our systems and stuff, because that was never a focus of mine. I'm like, oh, I want to buy real estate. So I went and bought a bunch of houses. And then I'm like, well, shoot, these houses aren't going to rent themselves out. I got to go figure out how to rent these houses out. So then I went and built this whole other company to rent my own houses out. So the back end of stuff was a mess, and still is, but it's getting to where it needs to be. We're onboarding a new person this week, which will hopefully be a long-term fit. More of like an EA/operations manager. Just that she's going to help build out a lot of the systems and stuff that aren't built out yet. And so it's still me and my wife in the business right now. I have a partner on a fix and flip. We did one fix and flip so far that I have a partner on it. A partner on a couple other properties, partners on a couple other properties. But as far as our business, is just me and my wife, and we do have contract-based operations managers at the moment.
Awesome. And before you got started, you had a vision of, where you wanted things to go, and all right, I want to get into real estate and do this. And now you're there, right? You own the real estate, you have a business building up. What's the next stage? What's the longer term vision from here in the next year, 2 years?
Yeah. So next 2 to 3 years, the corporate housing company, the plan is to have that at 300 houses every month. So we have 300 families in 300 different houses every month. On the corporate side of it, the buying, we're still we still want to keep buying. We're going to just keep on buying. What that looks like, probably within 3 years, we're going to be in the multifamily stuff and bigger stuff. Right now, we're just in single family, but we're just going to keep buying. I don't think that'll necessarily ever stop. So the most recent thing that I've started is I started doing a day with Rex. So it's where people want to see what I'm doing in my business. They feel stuck in their business. They really want to see what I'm doing, because I'm new into this. I've only been doing this for a year and a half. Year and a half. That's all I've been doing it. So I'm a lot closer to the start than Grant Cardone or someone that's been doing it 10 years. I'm down here. I know what the dig in the hole still looks like, and know what the packing the gravel in for the foundation still looks like, versus someone up here They kind of forgot about how that actually looks down there. But really, people can just come spend a whole day with me. I'll help them break through objections they have in their own business, why they're feeling stuck or what that looks like. I'll show them what we're doing in our business. It costs some money, but it's a way. I don't really make anything off of it at this moment, because I can get a videographer and I can get some content out of it. But I love helping people, hands-on helping people. I love that. And I can't just not make any money from it. I do help a lot of people just for free because I love doing that. But there is a point where I have to start, charging some money for it as well. So that's something that the newest thing that I'm doing right now. And I really want to grow that too, just because I love helping people. I know where that would have put me when I was first starting. I tried and I tried and I tried and I tried to get someone to just let me come hang out with them for the day. A real estate investor in a local town where I lived. Never would happen. I'm like, I'll help you. I'll do whatever. But it never would happen. It just never would happen. I would have messed up his routine. I would end up costing him more time than I'd have saved him and all that stuff. And I understand that now, but then I didn't. Because I'm like, I'm a person that wants to do it in person, just be there doing it. So that's what I'm trying to create for other people. But at the same time, we're just building up the local community here. We put on meetups, 2 different meetups across the state here, and just trying to help as many people out here as we can. And that's what I love doing.
And that's great, right? I mean, it's the more people that you help, the more people that you serve, right? You can feel better about, what you're doing and your legacy. But of course, that usually comes with the more people you help and the more impactful the help is, the more money you make, right? Maybe that's not the goal right now, not the main goal, and it's certainly maybe not happening, but down the road, you'll start helping more and more people and have more and more impact, which will bring in more money as well, right? It's a nice side benefit to it for sure. So as you kind of get that going and you're helping teach people a little bit, what's like the one big thing, and we talk a lot about different stuff, mindset and all that. What's the one big thing that somebody could take away from this episode that might have the biggest impact on them being able to move forward and improve themselves or their business?
The biggest thing for me was just jump in there. Just jump in. Create a problem and then find a solution. No one ever drowned by falling in the water. They only drowned because they stayed in there. So get in the water, and if you feel like you're going to drown, then you can call for help, and then you can find a way to swim out of it. But just get in there. That's the quickest way to success, especially when you're starting out.
Yeah, like you said, the real estate community, especially the sub-2 community, but even really in any industry or any hobby that you're getting into, whatever that is, even if it is health and fitness, right? Getting started is the most important thing. People are more willing to help you once they've said, like, hey, well, if you've said, hey, I've created all these problems, like, okay, I know you're doing this stuff. I want to help you get out of it. So, and you talked about earlier, is finding people who are ahead of where you are. Chances are they've run into that same problem. And then even if they don't know the answer, they can probably give you somebody that will help you out of that. So don't be afraid just because you don't know what you're doing. As long as you build the relationships with people who do know what they're doing, you should have that support, and that should give you that confidence to continue moving forward and not causing you to freeze or drown, right?
Yep. 1,000%. And even it's still something I struggle with even to this day. For me to bring a problem to someone, I always feel like I'm wasting their time if that problem's not so big that it's going to knock them down, basically. You know, I still struggle with bringing my problems to people and be like, hey, dude, I'm in this predicament here and I don't know what to do here. I need some help here. And I've had some very, very good coaches, like Jesse is one of the amazing coach that has really helped me out of like, I have this problem. What are 20 ways I can solve this problem?
Mhm.
You know, so just even now, me bringing my problems to someone is still a struggle for me. But, you know, and if I can figure them out on my own, awesome. But go create a problem and then bring it to someone. They'll happily help you through it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100% agree. So if people do create problems and they want to reach out to somebody who's ahead of them, like you, what's the best way for them to get in contact with you? And is there anything specific that, that you're looking for that maybe somebody could provide to you as well?
I'm always looking for more deals in Idaho, only Idaho, but I'm always looking for people who want to fund deals as well. You know, lend on deals. Always looking for that, build relationships there. Something I do with people that want to lend on deals of mine. I'll fly them to Idaho. They'll spend a couple days here. We'll see the property, do all kinds of breaking down, whiteboarding, all that type of stuff, just to because I like to build relationships. But if someone has a problem and they need help on it, they can reach me on Facebook, Instagram, Rex Shippy, send me a message, tell me what they're doing, tell me what the problem is, tell me who they are, you know, and I'll happily schedule a meeting with them, get on a call with them, and do my best to help them out with the problem.
Awesome. No, that's great. And I will include links to your Facebook, your Instagram, all in the show notes. But yeah, if you guys have anything, especially if it's in Idaho, but if you have money, if you have problems, right? Rex is here. He's an open book. He's definitely wants to help. So Rex, it's been a great conversation. I appreciate hearing your story, all the stuff that you've gone through. I think a lot of people will relate to that. So once again, man, thanks for coming on.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.